Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Recruiting Rundown. I am Kendall Smith, joined alongside of Wes Mitchell. Wes, the recruiting grind, it never truly stops, and you've been keeping up with all of it. So how has your life been? Have you just been going crazy trying to keep tabs on everything going on with South Carolina football?
Yeah, it's been good. I think it's a cliche when people say, oh, it never stops, but it really, truly never stops. South Carolina obviously had the spring game, and you might think, well, maybe things relax now a little bit. But no, Gamecocks coaches, assistants only. Head coaches can't go out right now by the NCAA calendar. But South Carolina's assistants, you may see on Twitter if you follow that stuff out there, fans. They're dropping in on high schools, checking in on prospects. This is called the spring evaluation period. And basically what that means is they can stop by a particular high school twice during basically the next month and a half or so. It starts April 15th through May 31st. There's a limit on how many times they can go out. But basically, this is when you're trying to maybe watch some spring practices. Maybe you check in with a guy when he's working out. So this is a very important part of the process as far as evaluation goes. And a part of the process, we talked to Beamer earlier this week, they didn't have this last year because recruiting was still shut down due to COVID. So coaches are very excited to get this part of the process back.
So, Wes, I think we've got to start talking about quarterbacks. I had the opportunity to speak with Dante Reno earlier in the week. He's very high on South Carolina. South Carolina also very high on him. We just saw earlier in the week that Dylan Lonergan has narrowed his schools down to 5, and South Carolina is one of those schools. Jaden Bradford, still one of those quarterbacks that's very much in the mix for South Carolina. So just kind of talk to us about what you've heard about these quarterbacks, where they're at, and any visits that they might have planned for South Carolina.
Yeah, I think those are the three we're keeping close tabs on. You look at the 2023 class and the 2024 class. That's kind of the trio, that we're watching. You start with Dylan, as you said, top 5 this past week. I think it's South Carolina, Alabama, Florida, Stanford, Ohio State. He's taken a very systematic approach to the process, Kendall. It's been like, here's the schools that like me. I'm going to visit them all. And then he's steadily chopped it down. Now you have the official, what I would call the final 5. And he is going to take official visits to all 5, probably in June. Then he'll use those visits to conceivably make a decision. And so far, he's set an official to South Carolina, June 10th. He set an official to Stanford, June 24th. So I don't really even think it's a surprise that he's set those 2 first, because it seems like those 2, at least kind of leaning on what Chad Simmons has said as well. He does a great job on On 3 as well. Those may be the top 2 behind the scenes, I think. So he's obviously very high on South Carolina. He's been to Columbia 5 times on unofficial visits. He's only been to Stanford twice, but obviously that's a good bit further away, so it's a little bit harder for him to get out there. But anytime you have a high academic kid, Stanford education, that's clearly going to be something that is intriguing to a prospect. So, I think Lonergan's one. He's gone the complete distance, no early commits. He's done his due diligence, and now it's kind of at the final part of the process. As you mentioned, though, those 2 2024 sitting out there, Dante Reno, Jaden Bradford, both incredibly high on South Carolina. South Carolina incredibly high on both of them. I think, again, it's those 3 that we're tracking. It's going to be interesting to see between those 2 classes, can South Carolina end up with 2 of those guys? It's kind of how I'm looking at it. And it sets up really well, though, kiddo. I mean, you look at going back, adding Spencer Rattler this past class, adding Braden Davis, and then Tanner Bailey, who gets here this summer, and then being in on these 3 guys. The quarterback recruiting, say what you want about the offense, say what you want about how it went last year, but it's also time we give credit to Marcus Satterfield for having South Carolina in the game and already landing some really good quarterback prospects.
And it's certainly setting up for an interesting summer, and that's kind of what I want to get into next, Wes. So as we just talked about, the recruiting calendar, it's constantly changing. You've got periods where coaches can go out and talk to players. You have periods where it's dead and they can't talk to anybody. So just give us kind of an overview of what these next few months are going to look like in terms of recruiting and what is and isn't allowed for South Carolina coaches.
Yep. So that May evaluation period or spring evaluation period I just talked about a second ago, that will go through May 31st. then the calendar sort of instantly turns to, rather than, the coaches going to see the high schools or the prospects, it reverses, and you're going to have a lot of prospects coming to campus to see the coaches in June. Now, some of that will be these camp days that they have. There will be 10 camp days where prospects are able to actually come in and work out for the coaches on the field doing actual football drills. And then at the same time, you're going to have several weekends there where South Carolina is hosting prospects on official visits. I think the way they're going to structure it is you're going to have 2 really big weekends. There'll probably be some guys trickling in the other weekends as well. But I'm already circling June 24th. That right now is setting up to be the biggest weekend. As we talked about, Lonergan coming in June 10th. My guess is that's going to be the other big one. But I talked to Marquis Anderson, number 2 prospect in the state of South Carolina for 2023 at Dorman High School. Went by and saw him earlier this week. He's set his official visit for June 24th. He's putting out a top 4 here soon. South Carolina will make that list. I think the Gamecocks are the favorites there. So June has, in the last few years, all of a sudden June has become a massive month for recruiting. And a lot of these kids follow this trend now. They come, they take their official visits in June. They sort of process everything they saw in July, and then they want to be done with it by August, which is, of course, when they're starting class and they're starting their senior season. So it really, I think the high school coaches like that as well. You don't have to worry about recruiting anymore. Don't have to worry about that wait. Just focus on your final season of high school ball. And I think a bunch of the Gamecocks targets are going to follow that exact trend.
You know what, Wes? It is definitely going to be an interesting summer, and I think you're going to stay very busy keeping up with all of it. You and Chris Clark do an awesome job as our recruiting insiders at Gamecock Central. Last thing for you, Wes, we had a couple of transfer portal news commits over the last week, including one of those being the son of a South Carolina coach. So just maybe give us a quick rundown on what happened with the transfer portal this week.
Yeah, Nate Adkins, who is Greg Adkins' kid, a tight end from East Tennessee State, comes in. And, I think they really looked and said, what are the positions that we need to add depth? And tight end was one of those spots. Nate is in the 6'3", 245, 250-pound range. He can catch the football. He's a crafty route runner, has good hands. But I think what he's going to be asked to do for South Carolina is going to be that guy that can be another physical blocker. He has said, whether it's blocking, whether it's split out, whether it's special teams, fullback, any of that stuff. So he's coming with the mindset. I think you look, obviously, Jaheim Bell is going to be the dude, if you even still consider him a tight end. Stogner's going to come in. Stogner's going to start. But I do think Adkins fully willing to come in and kind of play his role. And, this is the time of year they're trying to put the finishing touches on the roster for 2022. So veteran guy, going to come in, do what's asked of him, and obviously really cool for him on a personal level. He said he's never been in his adult life, obviously, he's never been on a team that his dad was like the actual coach. He last lived with his dad when he was in like middle school. So this is going to be a really cool opportunity for Greg Adkins and for Nate Adkins, obviously. And the Gamecocks get some added help at a position that they wanted to add depth.
Well, Wes, thank you for the updates. Another successful episode of the recruiting rundown. Again, we'll have more on recruiting for South Carolina football over on GamecockCentral.com. If you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. We'll be back at you soon with another episode of the recruiting rundown. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Wes, any final words?
No, we're good. It's going to be busy. And hey, circle May 8th. That's another date to know. Zabari Sandy, South Carolina safety target, will announce his decision. That is Mother's Day. Gamecocks in good shape there. So something else to keep an eye on, Kendall.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Wes. And thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we will see you soon.